what I wanted to jump in now and talk about is a little bit more specifically about what generative AI might mean in educational development and design. And again, I'm pulling from the research and my own experience right now, and all of this is emergent. So I'll go through a few things and then we're going to do some sharing again. So academic integrity is a big piece. I think in the work that I've been doing with faculty and the discussions I've had with faculty, as well as K-12 teachers, there's huge academic integrity challenges here. And I'm hearing things like going back to oral exams, going back to in-person exams. But as someone who is so excited about the accessibility of the internet and the flexibility it created, what does this mean for us? The other side of academic integrity is kind of the who's watching the watchman. As we try to fix academic integrity, companies like Turnitin are coming in with checkers that start violating students' privacy in some cases, but also aren't accurate. And I've just read an article the other day that some of these checkers are starting to flag work written by non-native English speakers more than other work. So what do these false positive means? If you have a chance, read the Twitter feed of Ian Linklater, an ed librarian who's really critiqued Turnitin and kind of the false positives around these checkers. Also, as a couple people have pointed out, students are able to game this stuff really easy. There's already apps that you can put your writing into. It'll transform it to evade checkers. So then we get into equity issues. You know, the students who aren't savvy enough, who don't have the money to pay for the apps, can get caught more in these checkers than other students. So what are some educational usages? I pulled this out of the UNESCO document, again, that I've linked. It's a great quick start guide around generative AI and especially ChatGPT. Manuel shared this with me recently. And what I love about some of these ideas is they're moving on beyond this idea of just output and saying, like, really, what can it do in education? So a Socratic opponent for students, the ability to enter text and argue with it and come up with new ideas. A guide on the side. So someone to advise you, someone to work with you, someone to coach you as you go through teaching and learning. A personal tutor. So working with students around their metacognition, providing feedback to students and teachers about how they did on a test. Again, privacy aside, you can already put parts of a test in, put your answers in, and see where you went wrong. I use it myself. I haven't mentioned this before, but one of the reasons I get so excited, or I've been so excited about generative AI, is I've spent my whole life with, I'm getting a lot better, but I've always had challenges with my writing since elementary school. Yet so much of what we assess is based on our writing. So being able to put my own writing into ChatGPT, having it output what the errors are in my writing and make a worksheet around that is something I've never had an instructor do. No offense to writing instructors out there, but I've never had that level of feedback. A few other areas, a co-designer. So someone as an instructional designer that we can do co-design with, creating rubrics, doing some alignment for us. You know, and lots of other usages. I'm not going to go through each one of them. I encourage you to take a look at this document for some more interesting uses in the education space. So ways that we can use it right now. And again, some of these are based on things that I've been testing and I've been doing. Some of these are based on the literature. David Wiley talks about this in a recent blog post. Generate learning materials. A lot of what we do in the learning design space. I remember doing some learning design where a group of folks I was helping called me a loader. They said, your job is just to load this in. That kind of loading that we do, the writing of, you know, the same discussion prompts, etiquette for discussions, all of that, I think we can start offloading some of that into generative AI, and it's quite good at that type of writing already. Alignment. Learning designers, ed developers are great at alignment, especially learning designers. And in my experience, generative AI is really good at alignment also. It's good at putting learning objectives into it, aligning with questions, aligning with assessments, putting content in, asking for learning objectives. I think alignment is part of our art, but it's also something we can get assistance with. Subject matter examples. This is an area, again, I've been using this to generate case studies. We often work with subject matter experts or faculty with expertise in subject matter, yet we do things like make prototypes. We, create case studies for a workshop. It's quite, ChatGPT is quite good at generative AI is quite good at saying, act as a economics instructor and write a X and creating that content. Or I recently did a portfolio project where I wanted to create a demo of a portfolio for urban planning. So I had it act as an urban planning student, and it wrote all my reflections for me and made it realistic. Textual analysis. So analyzing text for accessibility, putting in a prompt and having it using the WCAG standards, analyze a text and let you know how accessible it is. This is something we do with Blackboard Ally and other tools, but GPT seems pretty good at this. I've linked an example in the chat, in the document about equity testing. So putting in different equity resources and then having it analyze a text for bias and equity, which is from Dr. I'm forgetting her name. I'll share it in the next slide. Summarizing and transforming text. And where it, getting more into the bleeding edge is thinking about chatbots, thinking about incorporating ChatGPT into chatbot programs so that students can navigate different chatbots, different kind of custom tutors. Image generation, replacing our stock images, and educational video. There are now generative AI programs that are able to create educational videos just by typing in text. Programs like Descript, programs like Synesthesia, I think I wrote that right. So I wanted to share some specific prompts here now and kind of ways of doing some of the examples I shared. This is a prompt that I've used and I really like. I've used it with both myself and my son, who's 13. Act as an editor, analyze my writing for clarity and grammar, and list all of your suggested changes. Then rewrite the passage and highlight the changes you make and create a worksheet for those changes. So again, this was really lacking for me in writing instruction, is really digging into what these errors are. I wanted to share this example because it's a good example of incorporating our expertise knowledge into ChatGPT and also the amount of book knowledge it already had. So I'm not sure if you've heard of Ambrose, How Learning Works. A great book if you haven't read it. But use the book, How Learning Works, and based on the text, write a jigsaw activity, including worksheets that can be used in a university level workshop. Prepare a handout for each group. And then write 5 debrief questions to use with all of the groups. Align each of the questions to deep significant learning framework. So it did this really well. And if you've done a jigsaw activity for one of your classes before, jigsawing takes a long time. The part I really don't like about it is having to create the content worksheets for each group. And it was able to pull from How Learning Works. It was able to write the summaries, a learning objective, as well as the description of the instructor. So for those ed developers out there, ed consultants, instructional designers doing training, think about kind of what this might mean as a brainstorming tool, what this might mean as a tool to give you some shortcuts to doing your work. Writing learning materials, backward design. So for this, one moment, I'll just ask folks to mute if you haven't. One moment, let me just see who I need to mute here. Great, thanks so much. So writing learning material using backward design. I used a prompt here called the single shot, which I'll mention in a second, but that's when you feed ChatGPT a little bit of training data or whatever generative AI you're using. So the training data here I used was a set of learning objectives that I asked it to remember for the next task. So this was the prompt: act as a learning designer and create a backward design table with creative activities based on those LOs that I previously shared. These activities should incorporate different online tools and be aimed at second year university students. Apologies for the spelling. And this is what it came out with. It wasn't amazing, but they're pretty reasonable learning objectives. There's something I can work with. And again, thinking about that Go example, where's this going? What will it look like in 2 years? This is a textual analysis prompt I mentioned. Tell me the extent that this text is accessible according to the WCAG 2.1 standards. How would you change it? Please rewrite it to make it more accessible. So let's do another activity now. And for this activity, I'd like to use the Zoom whiteboard. And what I would like you to do is share how you're using generative AI in your own teaching, your own practice now. So I'm just going to throw up the Zoom whiteboard. I will mention it's a zooming whiteboard, kind of like Prezi. Sometimes you won't know where your Post-it note went. Don't worry about that. Feel free to dump something in the chat if that happens. I'm also going to save the whiteboard and send it back to everybody in my LinkedIn post at the end of this session. So I'm just going to create a blank whiteboard here. And using the plus sign on the whiteboard, what I would like you to do is to share how you're using ChatGPT. So to get to the sticky notes, just click on the sticky notes by opening the sidebar a little bit and add your sticky notes to this post. Again, feel free to also add the thumbnails. And I'm looking, there's lots of good chat or communication in the chat, which is great. Wonderful. So study buddy for my own learning. This is great. This is, to be honest, the one part of the workshop I've been waiting for, was to see how everyone is using this. Case studies, updating language to be more technical, lesson plan, proofreading my atrocious spelling. I also use it for that, Nick. Changing my tones to interact with students. Interesting. I haven't used it in teaching yet, except for discussion prompts in a lecture. Creating video scripts. Proofreading emails. Updating academic to be more academic or technical. One thing that I love about it is the ability to take language and simplify it. I tend to put explain this like I'm 5 in there a lot, or explain this like I'm 15. Write basic prose for a seminar topic, creating images of storyboarding. Oh, wow, this is great. Explanation of complex poetry. Draft section, so I see some brainstorming in there. To create engaging activities, absolutely. And just kind of a prompt tip, I don't know if any of you are doing this, is getting it to generate like 50 versions of something, like not just one engaging activity. Give me 50 examples of engaging activities based on this learning objective. And then it becomes kind of sorting and editing, changing my tone to interact with students, giving feedback to students, creating differentiated assessments. Wonderful. And a giant P there. I'm just going to shrink that one down a little bit. Giving gamification ideas, maybe gamification ideas. Creating draft workshop content. Generate basic program LOs. Wonderful. And Manuel's just given a tip on using the Zoom whiteboard if you haven't used it before. Wonderful. And we're going to do 2 more minutes on this whiteboard. So trying out different ways of organizing my storyboards. Asking about the appropriateness of a particular type of learning materials to learning styles or preferences. Possible functional language course for help plan my learner's course. Wrote basic prose for a seminar topic, project outlines. There are gold in them there hills. This is great. And let's just go 1 more minute on this, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to get again 2 folks to share if they want to unmute themselves and share in a second. And I will share this whiteboard as on a LinkedIn post afterwards. Wonderful. So learning for it to use my own data. I haven't used it yet, not sure where it will fit into my course development for federal agents. Creating frequently asked questions for learners with answers. I love that one. All right, I'm going to close off the whiteboard now. Again, I'll share this back with you. And what I'd like to do is if a couple folks want to share kind of a specific way they're using it or a prompting tip, I'll ask you to raise your hand. I'll get you to unmute and then jump in. John, please go ahead.
Hey, how's it going today?
Hey.
So one of the things that I found it to be really useful for is getting over the blank page paralysis. I don't know if everybody's experienced that, where it's like, hey, you need to generate something, you need to come up with some content, or write something, and staring at a blank page. The Chat GPT and the other generative AI tools, they can help tremendously with that. Just to get you started, and then from there, generates those ideas, and you start to work through it, and that's what I found it to be really useful for.
I love it. Thanks. And where are you coming from, John? What's your role?
Olds College of Agriculture Technology. I work in the Learning Commons, helping with educational technology for staff, students, faculty.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming and sharing. Anyone else want to unmute themselves and share something? It's kind of a daunting group to unmute yourselves for, but yeah, Janet, please go ahead, and please let us know where you're coming from.
Hi, I'm Janet Mayer. I work at the State University of New York at Fredonia. And my background is organizational development and ed tech, having started in the .com boom, and really looking backwards on what I didn't know then and trying to put those ideas in my head now. Anyway, so I've just been experimenting with the Chat GPT personally. I've written recommendation letters that have made people cry. And I had somebody make a resignation letter. So we're just doing it for regular correspondence. I have been accused of maybe not being ethical, that it's not my writing, but you do regenerate, and I edit and put my own touch on it. One thing I did find though, some things that I wanted to say, or I was trying to use it at work for a critique of something, and it didn't want to do anything that it might even think is negative.
Okay.
So I found if you put for a creative writing assignment at the end of your prompt, you can get around a lot. So I thought that might be useful for people.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that. Great. So thanks for sharing that on the whiteboard, and thanks for sharing the folks who unmuted themselves. I'm going to start sharing again, and I want to go over a couple skills. I want to go over a couple skills that we might be bringing into this space, or we might need in this space now. So emerging knowledge and skills. And one of the areas that is coming out is prompting. And I wanted to give a couple tips around prompting, but then I also want to critique the idea that prompting is going to be a big deal soon. So number one is become a researcher. I adapted these from Rachel Woods's work. I'm sorry, I didn't add the link because I couldn't find it on Substacks last night. I'll add it back into the document later. She is an AI developer. Become a researcher. So start researching and saving your prompts. Put them in a spreadsheet, see what's working. Always have a human in the middle. I think doing things with API or doing things with prompts without having someone to check it is really problematic now. Train the tabs. In my own work, and I'm not sure everyone knows this, is every time you do a search, ChatGPT has kind of a memory. So what that means is you can have certain tabs that you can go back to and you can ask it similar questions. So train those tabs up, put data, put questions into those tabs. I'll show you in a second this idea of role, context, task as a way to prompt and provide examples. Don't just do open shot generation, do one single shot, multi-shot generation. So these are from Dr. Philomena Hardman, who's wrote some great articles about using ChatGPT, and I really like her prompting tips. So she does really extensive prompting and in education. So give the AI defined role, act as a, and really explain the role. Give information on the target learners' demographics, what their zone of proximal development is, what their subject area is, what their level understanding and ability is. Domain expertise, sharing your domain expertise with ChatGPT. I think I did that in a couple of examples with How Learning Works and Defink, pulling in some of that expertise. Give it a task. What do you want it to do? Give it a title and a topic and an example for structure. So a couple tips, I've included a link to her article as well in the document. But can I get a thumbs up if you've heard of AutoGPT? I was quite shocked by this. AutoGPT is, I've linked to the GitHub in the document. It is a tool, software that has a memory and is able to give ChatGPT tasks to do. So in this example on Twitter, they asked AutoGPT to create an app for them. It recognized that they didn't have Node, Googled how to install Node, found it on Slack, Overflow, downloaded it with a link, extracted it, and created the server. So I know that Sam Altman, the person who helped create OpenAI, does not see prompt engineering as a future skills. He sees AI as moving beyond prompts. And to me already, with AutoGPT, it's moving beyond the idea of being a prompt engineer researcher. Another skill that we can think of as IDs and ed developers is API and applications. So we see right now, a lot of us are seeing prompting ChatGPT, but already you can use tools like Zapier, which is like if that, then this, to connect ChatGPT with other tools. So connect it with Google Spreadsheets, connect it with Excel, etc. I have Amazon Alexa at home. I'm sorry, terrible for privacy, but I want to connect OpenAI to it because my Alexa is so terrible at being an AI. It would be nice to see given an assist from that. I see a couple eye rolls in the chat there. Use the OpenAI sandbox if you get a chance. It's a great way to play with AI. You can customize its creativity settings and other settings on it, and try it out for Sheets. So there's already a plugin that you can use for Google Sheets. So you can apply OpenAI across spreadsheet columns, have it produce DALL-E images, have it use Whisper AI, have it generate text using ChatGPT. And I wanted to end, we have about 5 minutes left before a discussion, thinking about kind of a way forward. And the reason that I wanted to have this session is because, one of the big reasons is I came from the Faculty of Education, And I've seen so many people not embrace technology, and that's fine. But technology just went around them. And instead of them embracing it, Silicon Valley bros embraced it. And we ended up losing a lot of the things we did. So I think as IDs, as professors, as ed developers, we have a chance now to really think about this. And it seems to be moving even faster than the internet did. And to try to shape it, to try to bring it into our work. So UNESCO suggests these ways forward in the document I linked. Create opportunities for faculty, staff, students, and other stakeholders to discuss the impact of ChatGPT, of generative AI on higher education, and co-construct strategies. Again, these strategies are being co-constructed now by developers in Silicon Valley. What are we constructing? How are we dealing with it? Introduce clear guidance for instructors and students about how and when it can be used. Connect the use of ChatGPT to what we're trying to do in our courses. Review the forms of assessment. We've talked for a long time about the problems of assessment in university. As someone, again, who's had challenges with my writing, being only assessed by the quality of my writing has been incredibly frustrating. I think this is maybe a breaking point or a tipping point on this. Train teachers, researchers, and students to improve the queries they pose, or I would just say generally train them on thinking about these tools so that they're part of the conversation. And I want to end with 5 questions. How can instructional developers and educational developers be part of the momentum towards AI in education? What does that look like? What new skills and knowledge do we need? What is our role in this space now? What can we do to continue? And I noticed this came up in the issues. We can continue making education more accessible, equitable, and learner-centered. When the .com folks get to it, often this piece is forgotten. And what about the university? You know, what's the role of the university, and especially in training people for jobs? And I'm not saying that should be the central role of the university. What does it mean? So I wanted to end off with these questions. It's 10:58 now. I'm going to stop sharing and encourage you if you want to head into your next Zoom meeting. And I also want to thank everyone for joining. I really, really appreciate it to get to hear from all of you on the whiteboards, to get to hear from a couple of you on the mics. I'm going to stick around the room now for the next half hour, 1 hour. You're welcome to leave. You're welcome to stay in and just chat about this. And again, thanks for taking the time. What I'll do is I'll share a LinkedIn post with all of the resources I talked about today, as well as the documents, as well as the results from our chat. And great to see folks that I know already, and great to see a ton of new folks. So again, thanks very much.